Good morning, everyone. This is Lori Del Crodecki with the Nashville Networking Business Luncheons. So we do these several times a month all over Middle Tennessee. So every Tuesday we are right here on Zoom. You're welcome to join us live. Also in person, we meet every single Friday as well as the third Thursday of every month at different locations all over Middle Tennessee. So if you're not on our schedule, please join our Facebook or our LinkedIn group at Nashville Networking Business Luncheon. Also, we have a business page on Facebook as well as the website, NashvilleNetworkingBusinessLuncheon.com. So it's long, but it's exactly what it is. And you can be on our email list there so we can go ahead and notify you of exactly who our speaker is and what location we're at each week. So we always have a special speaker who talks to us about different tips, tricks, and ideas and things that can help us both in our personal as well as our business life to help get us to that next level. After that, we go around the room. Everyone has 1 minute to give us their name, what they do for a living, and how we can better refer other people to them. Then we also have some open networking before and at the end of the meeting and get to know each other and share tips, tricks, ideas, things that can help both of us, all of us. And so right now I'm going to introduce our speaker, Mr. Blaine Little. Please give him your attention.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody being here. And I appreciate talking about the subject. I advertised that I was going to be talking about fear and anxiety today. So I don't know if that created a sense of trepidation and more people didn't want to show, or they thought, y'all thought, I need this. Folks, we've been through a rough 11 months. It's been tough. We've had the year from hell. I mean, we just have. And some of us more difficult than others. And it's kind of created a sense of doom, a spirit of dread. I'm going to be talking about those two words. What is doom? What is dread? Here in just a little bit. But we've come through a lot, and we're hopeful that things will get a lot better in the next couple of months. Spring around the corner. We hope that the virus is less of a concern than what it has been. So we've had to deal with fear, and here in just a little bit, I'm going to put it out to the audience. I'm going to ask you all a fear question, or when's a time that you experienced fear and maybe it wasn't quite as bad as what you thought it was. But fear is one of the 6 emotions. Some say there's 7 emotions, some say 8, some say 27. But I'm going to go with the 6 different emotions. And we have happiness, sadness, disgust, anger, which is different than fear, surprise, which could be good or bad, and then fear. Fear. Sometimes people will use the term fear and anxiety interchangeably. They really are not. They're really a bit different. As I talk about the emotions, and especially the one when I said surprise, it could be good or bad. Typically, when we talk about an emotion, it's something that's instant. Now, guilt and worry are 2 examples of states. They are not emotions. They're man-made, really. They're man-implied. And we can have a sense of fear, and that can drive us into a state of anxiety, where everything is just pins and needles. And even though fear is kind of instant, we keep churning things up. We keep churning things up, and we keep bringing back the negative. And that, quite honestly, is not an emotion. It's a habit. It's a habit. Others can train us to behave that way, i.e. government, i.e. media. But we can choose to behave differently. So a spirit of fear, it affects us individually, but it also affects us in our business. How many people can think of a time when you, or if not you, maybe someone else, acted on fear and they made a real big mistake? It was just a poor decision. Yeah. When we go in and out of fear all the time, when we live in this state of anxiety, we tend to make bad decisions because we only see things one particular way, and we focus on that. All right. There's a famous saying out there, and I know I can call on Lori because I know she knows it. How does Zig Ziglar define fear?
I know this answer. I can't think of it right now.
I put you on the spot. That's my fault.
False evidence appearing real?
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that. I love that. Sorry, Lori, you can get me back next week. But I love that. False evidence appearing real. So we look at a situation and we think that is indeed the situation. From anxiety, that pulls us into a sense of dread or doom. And not everything is impending doom. Now, those people who suffer, they come back from the war and suffer PTSD or PTS. It's not a disorder. It's how your mind works. Post-traumatic stress. There is anxiety, but the anxiety quickly pushes them into emotions of fear more often than perhaps the rest of us. And within fear, you get into this fight, flight, or fright mode. You have to make a decision. What am I going to do? Am I going to punch back? Am I going to run away? Or am I going to just completely freeze and do nothing? And so we kind of put ourselves in that state of anxiety where fear can come back in more often. Let's talk about what is doom. Doom is impending. It's dread. It's this feeling that I'm going to die. The very worst is going to happen. How often does the worst really happen? Now think about it. Probably for the majority of us, the very worst that could go wrong doesn't. Okay. Let's take, for instance, that, there's a man somebody on death row. Okay. And they've been sentenced to death one day. They're usually there for years. And they live under this black cloud because they know one day the finality of the decisions that have already been made is going to come to fruition. All right. That is truly doom. Let's say, for instance, that you work in an office and a colleague of yours walked by HR, and let's say the colleague is in the cubicle next to you, and she says, guess what I heard when I went by HR? They said, your last check working here is going to be Friday. They're going to lay off about 25% of the people, and they're going to start with the alphabet, and you're there. It sounds like the decision has already been made, and that is a spirit of dread. You're having to face a negative that you don't want to face. Now, what if your cohort, your colleague, comes back to you and says, hey, guess what? I heard, I was walking by HR and they said they're not very happy with your second quarter productivity or sales or whatever it is. And that was it. No one's getting fired. They just weren't happy. Well, now you have the option to where you can stay in that state of dread and say, oh no, I'll probably be fired after the third quarter. Or you can say, you know what, I better turn things around and get into a spirit of optimism. The majority of the time when we're hit with something, state of anxiety, it's not doom, it's not dread. A few months ago, I was diagnosed with coronavirus and cancer at the same week. That week just sucked. I mean, that was rough. Fortunately, the Lord pulled me through it. But I made the decision that I was not going to accept finality until I actually got the word. So I heard about, I was diagnosed with COVID, and then I got the call that a test that they did was indeed cancerous, but I didn't know what all they would or would not be able to do. It was a few days before I could actually meet with a surgeon and said, here's what we're going to do. And by the end of it, you're going to be good. And I was like, whoo, thank you, Lord. There was some anxiety there, believe me. Oh yeah, there was a lot of anxiety, but there wasn't necessarily the feeling of doom. How many of us look to the worst case scenario all the time? Fear is an emotion, and it's helpful for us because it helps us to size up what is the worst case scenario, so we will start to prepare against it. And whenever I think of classic term of fear, in my mind, I always go back to the very first caveman who encountered the very first saber-toothed tiger. You know, how did he handle that? That was fright. That was fear. So how did he handle that? So that's a state of fear. What are some things that we can do to not keep putting ourselves into anxiety? We can accept fear. Wow, I have a decision to make. Fight, flight, fright. What is it? What kind of solutions can I look for? Is there something I can do? Can I get out of the situation? And we look at the political culture today, and it's a lot of doom and gloom. Why? Because the politicians and the media say so. The politicians and the media say so. And it goes to what's your focus, or how do you frame things? All right. So there's, up getting ready for the inauguration. There are tens of thousands of soldiers in the Capitol. What does that mean? So does that mean that they're going to have to fend off an attack and a revolution? Well, it's a matter of how you frame it. Or does it mean those soldiers are going to begin a military rule? Depends on how you frame it. Personally, I tend to trust, I'm a veteran, so I tend to trust my veteran brothers and sisters. I'm just not that worried about it right now. When people talk about things, that's one thing. When they start actually doing something, that's another. But how many of us live in this world of anxiety because we listen to the wrong people? We listen to the wrong resource, and we should be looking for options instead. So here's some things that you can do to conquer that sense of anxiety. And hopefully no one is feeling a sense of dread about anything right now. Well, some things that you can do is retrain your focus. What does this mean? Is there something that I can make out of this? Is there a silver lining? Is there a benefit? And I'm not being Pollyannish. I'm just saying that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Go find that reaction. Go find that equal and opposite. What's happening? What's going on? Up until perhaps this century, more millionaires were made during what time than any other in American history? Does anyone know? The Great Depression. The Great Depression. There were more millionaires made than any other time in the 20th century through the Great Depression. That is doom. Millions of people actually died of starvation in America, believe it or not. And so that's anxiety. And still yet, people were looking for, well, where is the opportunity? What can I do? So it's a matter of our focus. Make a list of what you can do. I love an good old-fashioned SWOT analysis, SWOT. And you can put it in a little crosshair, SWOT. And what's your strengths? What's your weaknesses? What's the opportunities? And what are truly the threats? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of that particular situation. And you start to look at that, and instead of just drinking the Kool-Aid of what everyone else is telling you, start taking a realistic look at what's really going on here. Do I have resources to do something positive? One thing I like to also ask myself is, I call it the Ice Age effect. If what's happening today or this decision that I make goes wrong, is it going to matter in the Ice Age 1,000 years from now? No. Is it going to matter a century from now? No. Nobody's going to know about it. What about a year from now? A month? A week? If I get to the point that it really doesn't matter a week from now, I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it. So I just make my plans and I move on. Now, cognitive behavioral therapist will also, and by the way, those are some things, if you're very left brain, you can do. I'll give you something right brain. We actually need to do both. But cognitive behavioral therapist will talk about mindfulness. And again, this does go to focus, but what can we do to get into, to relax ourselves and get into an actual state? If we can get out of our heads and all our thinking and more into exactly where we are, bring our consciousness to actually looking out these eyes and seeing things for what they are, instead of just reliving what might happen over and over in our head. So, what's going on in this office? What's going on in your living room or your kitchen or your office or where you are? What's actually happening? Meditation, you don't have to go om. But if you just take 5-10 minutes a day just to sit, you can lay down if you want, just to sit and be quiet, and just rest yourself and rest your mind. It kind of recharges your batteries in a more conscious way other than sleep. So those are just some things to consider. I got a lot of grief because I posted on my Facebook account, what's going to happen Wednesday? Nothing. People are freaking out over that. Oh my God, something's going to happen. Well, I hope not. If something does happen and go wrong, I'll be flexible enough to figure out what that is at the time. I'm not going to live in a spirit of anxiety until then. So what are you going to do to eliminate your anxiety and look for something positive and the optimism and to move you and your business forward? Lori?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Blaine. That was wonderful. So all of you that are watching online, you can see with us, join with us at our next meetings and get on our list to know who our wonderful speakers are, just like Blaine today. We have different speakers all the time. Nashville Networking Business Luncheon.com. Also join our groups on Facebook as well as LinkedIn. So this is the end of our recorded portion. You need to join us in person if you want to see and communicate with all the rest of us for the rest of the meeting. Thanks, everyone.